4K Cursed Secrets of the Haunted Lotus, uncover the sinister forces revealed after 30 years. Claire felt it before she saw it, an oppressive weight in the attic, the kind that prickled her skin and sent shivers down her spine. Dust motes danced in the weak light, swirling like ghosts among forgotten boxes. As she rifled through remnants of someone else's past, her fingers brushed against the leather-bound journal, aged and worn. It whispered secrets of a woman named Margaret, who vanished without a trace 3 decades ago. What the hell? She muttered, suddenly unnerved by the chill that crept around her shoulders. The initial thrill morphed into something strange and foreboding, an itch at the back of her mind. Ethan scampered nearby, his adventurous spirit radiating from him like light. "Mom! Look what I found." He held a rusted toy car, oblivious to the dark undercurrents swirling around them. But as Claire read the first few pages of the journal, an unsettling tale unraveled, a haunting tale of betrayal, woven through Maplewood's history and tethered to a flower, the lotus, rumored to possess the darkest of secrets. As she shared the thrilling stories with Ethan, eyes wide in excitement, darkness lingered in the corners of her thoughts. That night, her phone buzzed incessantly. A text flickered onto the screen, chilling her to the core. "Leave it alone, Claire. Some things are best forgotten." Each word dripped with menace. It scratched at her, gnawed at her instincts. Was someone watching? The journal told of old legends that echoed through the streets surrounding her home. The once friendly neighborhood felt foreign. Mr. Jenkins, the well-meaning neighbor, now held a sinister weight in her mind. His ever-watchful gaze felt oppressive. He always popped in, bringing cookies and conversation, but Claire noticed a pulse of unease under his genial facade. His smiles turned into warning glances, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something that didn't want to be found. The quiet street seemed to vibrate with a hidden energy, especially on fog-laden nights. Rounding the corner during one of her late-night excursions fueled by the journal's ominous tales, she noticed shadows flicker in her periphery. Panic surged. A knot tightened painfully in her stomach. "Are you there?" she whispered, her voice barely audible as she peered down the empty road. No response, only silence wrapped around her like a shroud. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. In quickened breaths, Claire sorted through the layers of history, trying to connect Margaret's fate with the creeping dread in her heart. Sleep-deprived nights bled into frantic days filled with calls to authorities, but each plea for help ended frustratingly. Nobody listened. Nobody seemed concerned that she felt watched, cornered into a world of escalating terror. Every shadow bore a face now, every whisper hinted at dangers lurking beyond sight. The friendship of her neighbors became chains, binding her to an illusion where trust felt like a cruel joke. Just as connections solidified, dark threads unraveled the fabric of her peace. The story twisted into a nightmarish reality where legends took shape, and danger festered in plain sight. In the grip of night, everything felt alive. Claire clutched the old journal, assessing her surroundings. Silence deafened her. Suddenly a door creaked open behind her, the air thick with a premonition. Her heart raced as whispers closed in like a vice. "You shouldn't have dug too deep, Claire." The shadows loomed closer, and she braced herself, knowing that whatever was coming might just tear apart the veil between the past and the present. Would she protect Ethan from the darkness that seeped between the stories of a long-buried past? A desperate gasp escaped Claire's lips as she spun around, her heart hammering against her rib cage. The attic door stood ajar, inviting the shadows in. An unsettling chill filled the space, wrapping around her like a noose. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but her legs felt rooted to the ground, tangled in dread. "Mom?" Ethan's small voice broke the silence, tinged with confusion and concern. He hovered at the bottom of the stairs, his innocent eyes wide. In him, she saw the light that pushed back against the darkness closing in around her. "What's wrong? Stay there," she cried, a desperate command. Frantic thoughts raced through her mind. If the stories in the journal were more than fiction, if Margaret's fate was linked to her own, she had to protect Ethan at all costs. She turned back to the shadows spilling into the attic. A figure danced just out of sight, breathing life into whispered fears. Heart racing, she gripped the journal tightly. The flickering bulb overhead cast eerie shapes, making her feel like she was in a twisted play where horrors unfolded on a stage set just for her. Ethan's whimper brought her focus back. She took a hesitant step toward him, determination woven through her fear. But the shadows pulsed, alive and waiting. "Mom, please come down." His voice cracked with rising panic. "Just hold on." The words spilled from her, but the suffocating air thickened with urgency. She felt a presence, a dark weight urging her to stay still, to surrender to the unknown. Suddenly, she heard a laugh, soft at first, then crescendoing into a chilling chorus. Claire's blood turned cold. In that moment, she couldn't tell if the laughter came from inside her mind or from the thickening darkness around her. "No, no." She retreated, inching closer to Ethan. The shadows lunged, reaching for her like desperate hands. She could feel them tugging at the edges of her sanity, drawing her deeper into a nightmare. With one final lurch, Claire raced down the attic stairs, her heart pounding like a war drum. But Ethan wasn't where she left him. The hallway stretched out like a labyrinth, an unsettling blend of shadows and whispers echoing in the silence. "Ethan. Where are you?" Her voice cracked, fear clawing at her throat. Panic surged as she reached the bottom step only to find the front door wide open, swinging in the night. The street beyond was a ghostly blur, the fog creeping closer like a predator stalking its prey. Dread wove through her veins as she stepped tentatively across the threshold. "Ethan." She cried again, her voice a desperate ship lost in an ocean of fear. The night wrapped around her, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, movement flickered near the edge of the streetlight. She squinted, heart in her throat. To her horror, a small shadow dashed between two trees, just out of reach. It was too small to be anything but her child. "Ethan." Claire's scream shattered the silence, reverberating through the night. She took off, racing toward the dark figure into the very heart of fear, but as she gave chase, the laughter echoed in her ears again, a sinister melody that curled around her like smoke. Something was wrong, wickedly wrong. And then she saw a glint of something metallic protruding from the ground where Ethan had dashed. A horrifying realization settled in. What she thought was just a story had a gruesome reality. The sacred lotus wasn't just an old tale, it was a warning. The shadows around her morphed into twisted forms, and the mocking laughter grew louder. Claire's resolve faltered for a brief moment, the weight of reality crashing down. What horror had she unearthed? Then, through the encroaching darkness, she thought she saw Ethan's face, pale and terrified, but it flickered back into the gloom before she could reach him. "Ethan." Her heart shattered as she reached the edge of the trees, fury and fear propelling her forward. But she knew this was just the beginning. The lotus had secrets, and now they were clawing their way back into the world. She needed to uncover them, or the shadows would feast on her. Family. With every step she took into that suffocating darkness, Claire knew one thing as her pulse raced in trepidation: she had to know what bled beneath the surface, and that knowledge might just cost her everything. "Ethan." Her voice pierced the heavy night, evaporating into the suffocating silence that greeted her. The fog swirled around her ankles, curling like a serpent. It was thick and cold, the kind that drained the warmth right from her bones. She stumbled forward, desperate, eyes darting from tree to shadow. She could hear breathing her own, fast and ragged, mixing with the whispers that threaded through the darkness. Each breath felt like a warning, a reminder of the evil lurking just out of sight. Then she heard the laughter again. Higher now, more frantic, and it was unmistakably Ethan's. "Mom." His voice carried a haunting echo, like he was trapped in a labyrinth of nightmares. "Where are you?" She lunged into the darkness, branches clawing at her arms. A glimmer caught her eye, the same metallic flash from before. She fell to her knees, heart racing, blood thumping in her ears. It was a small toy truck, caked with dirt and something darker. The laughter twisted into a mocking chorus in her head, circling her like wolves. Ethan. Panic bubbled inside her, but a strange sense of dread held her back. She stared down at the truck, a familiar image from their laughter-filled days in the park. Memories twisted sharply in her mind, all the happiness now piled on a bed of fear. Sudden silence surrounded her, thick and oppressive. It was as if the world had come to a standstill, waiting. Then, out of the stillness, a whisper floated toward her. "Help me, Mom." It was softer now, laced with urgency and terror. Ethan. She didn't care that it was leading her deeper into the woods. She had to move, had to break through the noise, the shadows swirling just beyond her reach. She darted between the trees, the laughter fading into an unsettling silence. "Mom." His voice again, closer this time. It sliced through her resolve, pulling her into action. She sprinted through the underbrush, heart pounding like a drum of sacrifice. The laughter simmered until it burst forth again, echoing through the night. "Follow the sound." She yelled into the shadowed abyss, the walls of the forest closing in. Every step felt heavy, like the ground beneath was fighting against her desperate need for truth. And then she saw it, a clearing bathed in eerie moonlight, casting elongated shadows over the hidden shapes. Ethan stood at the edge, small and fragile. But something was wrong. His face was obscured, filled with shadows she could not distinguish. "Ethan." She reached for him, her voice cracking with hope. "Mom. Help." He was standing next to a gnarled tree, one that twisted upward like a monster grasping at the sky. Its bark was blacker than night, glistening in some unseen light. She rushed toward him, a sense of urgency propelling her forward, but as she approached, realization washed over her like ice water. The tree pulsed. It breathed. "No," Claire whispered, a chill prickling her skin. "Mom." Ethan's voice pulled her back. He was standing closer, too close. A dark shape shifted behind him, lurking like a predator. Her blood ran cold. "Ethan, get away." Panic surged within her, but dread anchored her feet to the ground. The shadows uncoiled, revealing a figure of pure darkness, eyes like pits of despair locked onto her. It grinned with a malevolence that felt ancient, echoes of warnings she didn't fully understand crashing into her. "It wants you," Claire, it hissed, the voice slithering through the air like smoke. "To be one with the lotus." The light flickered, life seeping from the leaves as dread crept closer. She couldn't breathe, could only see Ethan's terrified eyes, filled with the reflection of the approaching darkness. And then the laughter erupted again, sharper, darker, mingling with echoes of despair. In that moment, Claire understood there was no escape. The secrets of the lotus were alive, hungering for blood. "Ethan." She screamed one last time, rushing forward. The shadows loomed, desperate hands reaching out, threatening to consume everything she held dear. As she lunged into the darkness, a wicked whisper curled around her, promising that the true horrors had only begun. What terrible truth lay hidden beneath the surface, waiting to ensnare them both? Claire stumbled through the darkness, her heart hammering in her chest like a caged animal. Unseen branches thrummed against her skin, leaving angry scratches that burned like fire. Her mind was racing with fear and fury. She had to save Ethan. "Mom." His voice was stronger now, a call that slashed through the suffocating stillness. She could almost feel his tiny hands reaching for her. It pushed her forward, deeper into the heart of the forest. With every step, the shadows felt thicker, more alive, as if they were wrapping around her, pulsing with a life of their own. As she neared Ethan, the ground beneath her began to tremble. The tree loomed larger, its gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers beckoning her closer. She glimpsed Ethan's small frame, now nearly lost, swallowed by the pitch-black shadow of the tree. His eyes shone with fear, yet behind him lurked a heavier shadow, horrid and looming. "Ethan, move!" she yelled, desperation lacing her voice. But he didn't budge. Instead, his gaze was locked on the dark figure that hovered, closer now, almost merging with the bark itself. "Don't be afraid," the figure whispered, a soothing croon filled with deceit. The darkness shifted, revealing a face that should have been familiar, but it was twisted, distorted into something unrecognizable. "Join us, Claire. The lotus will open its arms to you." The sinister word wrapped around her like a heavy fog. The lotus, it meant something, but the memories were buried in the chaos racing through her mind. It felt ancient, wrong. Get away from him. She charged forward, every instinct screaming at her to protect her son, but the moment she stepped closer, the shadows surged, forcing Claire back. It felt as if the ground itself was conspiring against her, pushing her away from the boy she would save at any cost. Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, a wild, cacophonous sound that twisted her stomach. It came from every direction, drowning out her thoughts, creating a deafening symphony of madness. "You're too late, Claire. You've already entered the lotus." A sickening realization seeped into her bones. She was trapped. The darkness was alive, hungry. The blood must be spilled. The shadow hissed, driving fear deeper within her. Ethan fell to his knees, a fruitless attempt to reach out to her. But the shadow coiled around him, its tendrils reaching for the innocent essence that pulsed in his small body. "Ethan!" Her scream echoed, vibrating through the suffocating silence, but it was met with a profound stillness that pulled at her sanity. She felt the warmth draining from her heart as despair settled like a weight on her chest. A choice loomed before her, save herself or save him. She hesitated, time suspending in a thick tar of dread. The shadows giggled in delight, as if feeding off her indecision. Then, driven by instinct and boiling rage, Claire lunged. The darkness writhed, pulling back in surprise, but she fought against it, her limbs propelled by sheer will. She reached Ethan just as the air exploded with chaos. A blinding light erupted from the tree, flooding the clearing with ghostly radiance. The shadows shrieked, writhing and twisting, as the light engulfed them. Claire swept Ethan into her arms, cradling him tightly as the force surged around them. But as the light flickered, she glimpsed something, a truth hidden in the depths of the shadow. It would not end here. The figure began to shift and morph, revealing signs etched with desperate cries and lost lives. Her own past was tangled in the roots of the sinister lotus. With her heart pounding, Claire grasped Ethan's hand tightly. A darkness pulsed around them, unwilling to let go. "We need to run." She felt the ground shake violently, a last desperate attempt to keep them. As they made their escape, the laughter twisted into something more sinister, echoing through the trees and clawing at her spirit. "We'll find you again, Claire, when you least expect it." The shadows screamed in disarray behind them, but the clearing faded with each step they took. Claire knew one thing: she had stumbled upon a darkness deeper than she ever imagined. What other horrors awaited them as they ventured back into the night? The forest felt like it was closing in around them, a claustrophobic nightmare wrapping tighter with every hurried step Claire took. She and Ethan ran, but the path seemed to shift, twisting like a serpent under their feet. The trees loomed, their branches reaching out as if eager to snatch them back into the darkness. Ethan was quiet now, his small hand trembling in hers, his breath quick and shallow. The shadows seemed to whisper, taunting her as they fled. "We know your secrets, Claire," they hissed. Their words slithered into her mind, chilling her from within. How could they know anything about her? This must all be part of the nightmare. "Stay close," she urged, glancing back over her shoulder. The darkness behind them stirred, writhing like a living thing, almost as if it was testing the boundaries of its prison. The laughter returned, echoing like a sinister melody that layered over her thoughts. The shadows glimmered as they tumbled over roots and rocks, their edges sharp and jagged against the pulse of the haunting moonlight. She felt a tug of dread clawing at her gut. Ethan's feet were slowing. "Mom, I can't know," Claire cried, gripping his hand tighter. "Just a little further." The light barely illuminated their path, narrowing to a whisper of silver that grew dimmer with every inch they traveled. Then, like a slap to the face, they erupted into a clearing, the same one where she had found him. It was unchanged, the tree standing sentinel against the night, but now it loomed larger, menace radiating from its gnarled frame. Claire breathed hard, panic clawed at her throat. This is where we were. It can't be. She darted her eyes around, searching for signs of the dark presence that had once overwhelmed them. But that laughter, it was stronger now, a throbbing heartbeat behind the onslaught of terror. This isn't right, Mom. Ethan trembled, dread etched across his young face. We have to go back. But before she could respond, the air thickened, chills snaking down her spine as the shadows coalesced before them, solidifying into a figure that drew nearer. It was that same twisted face, now louder, more insistent. The figure stepped forward, its voice resonating within her bones. Welcome back, my dear. I've been waiting for you. Get away. Claire shouted, brandishing her fists as if they could ward off the horrors lurking just beyond the light. She could feel the warmth of false hope flickering inside her, but dread was clawing at her from the darkness. Ethan cried out, stumbling back into the earth, his small hands digging into the ground as if he was being pulled under by an unseen force. Mom, help. Ethan. Claire's scream rang out, shattering the tension like glass. She lunged forward, the shadows wrapping around her legs, dragging her down. The laughter grew, shrill and mocking, taunting her as she fell. No. Not again. Claire fought against the ground, but the tendrils of darkness wrapped tighter, squeezing the breath from her lungs. The sinister figure loomed, a terrible silhouette against the pale moonlight. We're bound together, Claire. You're part of it now. You will return to the Lotus. Everything crumbled around her as Ethan's terrified gaze locked onto hers. She saw the helplessness reflected back, the promise of nightmares to come. She couldn't let it take him. In that dark moment of despair, something ignited deep within, a flicker of defiance. I will fight you. Claire roared, pushing against the weight of despair dragging her down. I will protect him. The ground shook beneath her, the malevolence rippling in furious response. The darkness recoiled, even if it was just for a moment. But it was enough. With every ounce of courage she had left, she pulled Ethan close and stood. We need to break this. Together. But as they turned to flee, the shadows howled in rage behind them, now hinting at a terrible truth. Escaping wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of their nightmare. And as they rushed back into the suffocating dark, Claire felt the whisper behind her, chilling her to the bone. You can never escape the Lotus. You're woven into its fabric. What kind of force had they unleashed, and would their strength be enough to confront the horror awaiting ahead? Claire stumbled as they ran, the chilling sound of laughter echoing in her ears, a ghastly symphony that grew louder with each desperate step. She could feel the shadows crawling up her legs, rippling and slithering like serpents eager to pull her down into the earth. Ethan was still clinging to her hand, his small body quaking with every sound, every tremor of the ground beneath them. Mom, what is it? He whimpered, eyes wide and terrified. Why is it so dark? Just keep running. She urged, tears blurring her vision. The trees closed in again, their branches snatching at her hair, pulling her backward, but she didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. Not when that figure lurked just beyond her sight, waiting for a moment of weakness to strike that as they tore through the suffocating darkness. The air was thick and electric, stinging her lungs and wrapping tighter around her like the tendrils of the lotus. The memory of what happened before clawed at her mind, each whisper of the night taunting her with secrets she wished weren't true. She had thought they were free of this horror, but it had unmistakably followed them. The shadows surged, volleying against Claire like an unseen tide. You cannot outrun your past. The figure's voice echoed, circling around her, invasive and malicious. It crept into her thoughts, slipping through the cracks of her mind like fog. You thought you could escape, but you belong to the Lotus, body and soul. Don't listen. Claire shouted, tightening her grip on Ethan. We're strong. We can break free. Racing forward, they stumbled into another clearing, the air alive with crackling energy. It was eerily illuminated by a silvery glow, bathing the ground and revealing a grotesque sight: torn branches twisted together as if in a frenzied dance, forming a dark altar. Dread seeped into her bones like ice water as she recognized it. This was where it had all begun. Ethan's tremors escalated, fear radiating from him as he clung to his mother. No, no, no. We shouldn't be here. I know. Claire panted, glancing around. The absolute silence pressed down on them as if the forest demanded their submission. It felt wrong, everything felt wrong, as the shadows whispered promises she couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. From behind the altar, a figure emerged this time, not a twisted shape but a woman, ethereal and haunting, with hair that flowed like liquid shadow. Her face was obscured, but piercing eyes glinted like molten gold. A heart-stopping dread settled in Claire's chest. You seek to flee? The woman whispered, voice dripping with malice. Get away from us. Claire screamed. But her voice was lost to the wind. Ethan gasped, stepping back as the woman advanced. They're linked, you know, she purred, each word like poison, curling into Claire's ears. You can't sever the bond with just will shut up. Claire cried, feeling the tendrils of despair wrap tighter. The specter began to dissolve into shadows, her laughter mingling with the trees, a haunting echo that promised doom. You will return to us, Claire. The lotus claims what is its. A jolt of panic surged through Claire, and she reached out for Ethan, pulling him close. We can't let it win. We can't. In that moment of desperation, the ground trembled once more, as if the very earth was alive with despair. Claire felt a surge inside her, a desperate grasp for the last threads of hope. We'll fight. She shouted, feeling the urge to push back against the darkness that was breathing down their necks. But just as she prepared to run, the shadows writhed, surging toward them like a tidal wave of darkness, as the ground beneath her feet began to crumble. Mom, where do we go? Ethan cried, horror etched into every inch of his tiny face, his hands gripping her tightly. Anywhere but here. Claire screamed back, her heart pounding with urgency, and as they fled, that laughter chased them into the night, echoing across the trees, entwined with a terrible refrain, the lotus will not let you go, not now, not ever. As they plunged deeper into the terrifying unknown, Claire had to wonder, were they running toward freedom or deeper into a labyrinth of horrors that had awaited their return? The ground vibrated beneath Claire's feet, unsettling her balance as she dragged Ethan along. The shadows surged behind them like dark fingers clawing for their escape. They raced through the trees, bark scratching at their skin, branches slashing across them like the fangs of lurking beasts. The laughter of that woman twisted, echoing in their ears, filling every silent space with a sinister melody. Mom, please. Ethan cried, breathless, struggling to keep up. I can't run anymore. There's no choice, Ethan. Claire yelled, desperation clawing at her throat. We have to keep going. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest, a relentless drumbeat screaming that time was running out. Suddenly, the looming trees parted, opening into a narrow path that led deeper into the suffocating darkness. Claire hesitated, the faint sound of the laughter fading slightly. Maybe we can lose her, she breathed, looking at Ethan, whose face was pale and tear-streaked. He nodded, his eyes filled with fear and trust. As they entered the path, the dense forest closed around them again. The darkness felt almost alive, breathing around them, pressing in with a palpable weight. Claire felt the unease settle in her stomach like a stone. Mom, what is this place? Ethan asked, his voice trembling. I don't know, she replied, clenching his hand tighter. But we need to keep moving. Just ahead, something glinted faintly through the thick brush. Claire squinted, trying to make sense of it. It flickered in and out, like a dying star battling against the dark. A flash of hope sparked within her. Ethan. Do you see that? Is it light? He stammered, squinting alongside her. Before she could answer, a surge of wind swept through the trees, crashing against them with the force of wrath. It pulled at Claire's clothing and threatened to shove them back into the embrace of the shadows. She stumbled but managed to regain her footing, bringing Ethan close to her chest. Stay close. She shouted over the howl of the wind. As they approached the glimmer, Claire's stomach twisted. It wasn't a beacon of hope, it was a frayed tapestry, hanging from the gnarled branches above. A grotesque patchwork of images tortured her gaze, faces twisted in agony, mouths open in silent screams. The fabric held stories of despair, each thread woven with the essence of the lotus. No, no. Claire gasped. A visceral reaction surged through her, memories she desperately tried to forget crashed down upon her like an avalanche. Mom! Ethan whimpered, clutching her tightly. Make it stop. I'm scared. Look away. She ordered, almost frantically. It's just a trick, a trap. But as they turned to flee, the laughter returned, louder and sharper than before. The woman's voice, now dripping with sinister glee, echoed through the night. You can't escape the truth, Claire. Your fate is entwined with the lotus. You were chosen. Chosen for what? Claire shouted back, the futility of the question creeping cold into her veins. Just then, the sound of breaking branches erupted behind them, amplifying the pulse of panic in Claire's chest. Shadows swirled chaotically, drawing nearer as they closed in around her. Mom! Ethan screamed, tugging at her urgently. Run! They stumbled forward, pushing past the twisted branches that reached like skeletal hands, clawing and scratching at their flesh. As they barreled down the path, a bone-chilling realization seized Claire. It's not just us, she breathed. It's after everyone connected to the lotus. We're not alone. The realization hung like a knife's edge. They weren't just escaping a single nightmare, they were awakening an entire legacy of terror, and just where the path darkened further, each heartbeat echoed with an ominous whisper, mingling with Claire's fears. You cannot hide, Claire, you will bring them back, you will give them what they crave. A haunting scream cut through the air, unmistakably human. Claire's heart sank deep into her gut. Who is that? She stammered, dread coursing through her body, her instinct screamed at her to run, but as fear entwined with desperation, she felt they were being drawn back, deeper into the lotus, away from freedom, into the maw of chaos. What awaited them there, deeper in the depths of darkness, lurked like an unspeakable horror, the truth that might shatter everything. Would they discover the sinister connection that bound them to the lotus, or would they be consumed entirely? With Ethan's grip tightening around Claire's hand, they bolted deeper down the twisted path, the haunting laughter morphing into a relentless chant that echoed in her mind. Chosen, chosen, you cannot escape. The very shadows seemed to snarl, suffusing the air with an energy that crawled beneath her skin. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground itself wanted them to stop. The branches clawed at their clothes, twisting like desperate hands trying to keep them from escaping. The wrongness of the air turned her stomach, a stench of decay and sorrow sharpening the fear in Claire's heart. Mom, I can't breathe. Ethan gasped, his voice breaking under the pressure. Just a little further. She replied, forcing her own breaths to come steady, though her heart raced like a caged animal. They had to find a way out. Suddenly, the chanting stopped. The shadows congealed ahead, forming a wall of darkness that rippled as if alive. A singular voice sliced through, low and throaty, I see you, Claire. It swept around her like a thick fog, curling into her ears and squeezing her lungs. Claire's chest tightened. Who are you? You're past your sins, they are returning, the voice hissed, weaving through the trees. You cannot outrun the lotus. You are tied to its legacy, just as the others were. Mom, please. Ethan cried, desperation edging his tone. I'm scared. But Claire was frozen, her eyes darting to the side, where she thought she saw flickers of movement. Were there others, trapped like her? Voices began to whisper from the shadows, rising in volume, a cacophony of anguish. Help us, each plea, a hook burrowing into her heart. Ethan, we have to go now. Claire forced the words out, shoving her fear aside. Holding on to her son, she darted past the darkness, but something snagged her ankle, a cold, slimy tendril that wrapped around her skin like a vice. She fell, pulling Ethan down with her, his terrified squeals mixing with the echoing wails. No! Claire screamed, struggling against the grip that held her tight. Her fingers clawed at the ground, the earth alive with a throbbing energy, desperately urging her to surrender. Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, sharper than glass. You cannot resist. The lotus feeds on your pain. It danced through the air as the shadows pressed in closer, encircling them like a living entity. In a burst of panic-fueled adrenaline, Claire tore away from the grasp, hauling Ethan up with her. They stumbled to their feet, running recklessly into the deeper dark. What they encountered next was a clearing, illuminated by the faintest glimmer of moonlight that fought its way through the treetops. But the light revealed something horrific: dilapidated figures emerging from the black. Their outlines bent and shimmered, their faces warped in anguish, eyes hollow and searching. It was a haunted congregation, faces contorted in an eternal scream. Join us, they chanted, their voices a chilling harmony steeped in sorrow. Join us in the lotus, get back. Claire shouted, instinctively pulling Ethan closer. The weight of hopelessness pressed heavy on her chest, the thrill of fight or flight gripping her heart. Then, a sudden rush of wind swept through the clearing, scattering the twisted figures as the laughter crescendoed into mania. You cannot escape. You'll bring them back. No. Claire shouted defiantly, but her voice trembled, uncertain. They had been brought to this place of despair, and the shadows were closing in, ready to reclaim their due. Suddenly, a flash of light flickered above, revealing a path leading deeper into the heart of the forest, the way where the truth lay waiting. Mom, please. Let us just go home. Ethan cried, the desperation in his voice sparking something within her. But Claire hesitated. A choice loomed over her like a grim specter. Stay with Ethan and risk the hum of the gathering shadows? Or follow the light, knowing she may awaken horrors worse than anything they faced? The whispering voices grew louder, promising revelations and terror alike. Claire, they beckoned. What will you choose? With a heart thundering against her ribs, she took a shaky breath and stepped toward the light, not knowing if it was salvation or doom, but aware that the answer loomed just beyond the dark. What awaited them next would shake everything she thought she knew about the lotus and the choices that bind them all. Would they discover the truth, or become part of the very horror they ran from? As Claire stepped toward the light, the shadows writhed and howled in protest, pulling at her legs, attempting to reclaim what they refused to let go. Ethan clung to her side, his breaths heavy and quick, his wide eyes reflecting the flickering illumination. Mom, don't. He cried, his small voice laced with sheer terror. She faltered, the grim chorus of despair calling her name, but as she glanced into her son's face, a face molded from her own fears, she felt a surge of defiance rise within her. We'll find a way, Ethan, somehow, she promised, but the shadows were relentless, slinking closer, hissing secrets that stung her ears. Bring them back. Feed the lotus. The congregation's voices echoed, slithering under her skin, wheedling their way into her mind, casting doubt where there had been resolve. Focus, Claire. She tightened her grip on Ethan's hand, pulling him beneath the veil of light. They stumbled through the glare, illuminating a path woven with lush green underbrush that felt soft underfoot. But bright as it seemed, the air crackled with tension, alive with darkness just beyond reach. Where are we? Ethan whispered, scanning their surroundings as the encroaching shadows faded into the edges of his vision, like a bad dream receding at dawn. It's okay, just keep moving. But with each step, Claire felt the earth rumble beneath them, as if the very ground was alive, reacting with resentment. A low growl reverberated, an almost heartbeat that thrummed in sync with her pounding pulse. Ahead, the path forked at an eerie tree, gnarled limbs reaching skyward like skeletal fingers. One side delved deeper into the dark embrace of the woods, while the other led toward a faint glow, pulsing like a heartbeat in the night. What if it's a trap? Ethan's voice trembled, whispering what they both feared to consider. Then we'll face it together, Claire declared, heart racing at her own bravado. She couldn't let fear dictate their lives any longer, couldn't allow the sinister whispers to pull her under. They stepped toward the glowing path, the luminescence growing brighter, illuminating splintered stones that lined the trail like faded bones. Something cold brushed against Claire's hand, freezing her in place. She looked down, spotting a withered finger, small and childlike, reaching toward her. "Help me," the voice was soft, pleading, echoing from within the shadows. The weight of its desperation echoed through her chest. Claire felt trapped between compassion and horror. "Mom, we have to go." Ethan panicked, dragging her forward when she hesitated. Snapping back to reality, they forged ahead, the glow morphing into an archway adorned with symbols of the lotus. The air thickened, swirling with scents of damp earth and something sweet, like the scent of rotting flowers. "This isn't right," Claire whispered, dread knotting in her stomach. Suddenly, the light dimmed, sparking a rush of shadow. The congregation appeared again, their faces shifting and writhing in the luminous gloom. "Join us." Their voices screamed, each word a dagger that plunged deeper into her mind. "Get back!" Claire shouted, drawing Ethan closer, her breath coming in ragged gasps. But a figure materialized from the shadows, obscured yet ominous, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Claire," it hissed, a voice they both recognized, sending chills through Claire's bones. "You are not free. You will bring them back. The lotus demands it." "Who are you?" she forced out, fists clenched toward the manifestation. But the figure merely smiled, a haunting expression that chilled her to the core. "You've awakened the past it hungers." With horror rippling through her, the realization sunk in, the truth lay buried in chains of consequence. Yet before she could react, the shadows surged forward, a wave ready to consume them whole. "Run!" Claire shouted, pulling Ethan away from the echoing chant. But with that simple command, the path twisted, spiraling into darkness as if the forest itself conspired against them. In the chaos, she felt Ethan slip from her grasp. "Ethan!" Panic surged through her chest, racing sweat from her brow as she turned. But she could already hear deeper voices among the anguished whispers, each crying out for help, for reunion, for revenge. What had she awakened? In the shrouded depths of the nightmare, would they fight for freedom or be chained to the cursed legacy of the lotus forever? The choice lay ahead, but the shadows were gathering. The wall of darkness pressed in, as they were drawn further into the heart of an ancient terror. "Where are you?" Claire shouted, pressing forward into the maddening blackness that awaited them, but only silence followed, thick and suffocating. "Mom!" She heard a distant cry, echoing like a distant memory, a knife twisting in her heart. The path remained shrouded in uncertainty, daring them to take the plunge once more. The darkness was suffocating, a living entity wrapping around Claire as she pushed through the swirling shadows. Her heart pounded in her chest, frantic like a wild animal searching for escape. "Ethan!" she cried out, voice trembling. The scream felt swallowed by the void, echoing back to her as nothing but a whisper. A cold wave grazed her skin, and she flinched, glancing around, desperate for any sign of him. The laughter now faded into a low murmur, intertwining with a chorus of anguished whispers yearning for release. Claire's resolve hardened, she would not lose Ethan to this hell. "Mom!" His voice pierced through the warped gloom, clear and panicked. She surged toward it, willing herself to fight against the thickening shadows that threatened to pull her under. "I'm coming!" she shouted, every word drenched in adrenaline. As she raced forward, another wave of darkness surged outwards. Ghostly figures flickered at the corners of her vision, their outstretched hands clawing at her, feeding her fear. But Claire pushed through, eyes locked onto a glimmer in the distance, a faint glow hope. "Don't let go, Ethan," she said, her voice a fierce declaration. "We can break free." Claire stumbled into a clearing that seemed to breathe with life, the silvery light pulsing like a heartbeat. Ethan stood there, wide-eyed, a shimmering mist swirling around him, a fragile barrier between feared despair and a promise of light. He was illuminated, his small frame surrounded by shadows that flickered restlessly at the edges. Behind him lay the altar, twisted and grotesque as ever, beckoning both her and Ethan with promises of power and ruin intertwined. Shadows writhed, desperate to reclaim their stolen prey, but Claire focused solely on her son. He was her light. "Keep moving," she urged, creating a path. The grip of darkness tugged at them, but the radiant pulse seemed tied to his spirit, anchoring her fears. "Mom," it's getting closer. Ethan squeaked, his voice edged in terror, tears glistening in his eyes. Almost there, love. Just a little further. Claire pressed on, determination propelling her, every footfall a silent prayer for deliverance. The shadows suddenly coiled, surging forward in a chaotic rush, intertwining like serpents and reaching for their prey. You cannot escape what is entwined, Claire. The dark figure hissed, its voice crawling under her skin. No. Claire grunted, pulling Ethan behind her as she planted her feet firmly, a barrier of love against the creeping despair. You don't control us. The air trembled around them, vibrating with tension. The altar glimmered, flickering between the dark and light, creating an intense pull at the heart, enticing with the weight of centuries' promise laced with chains. Join us, Claire. Restore the balance. The shadows pleaded, their whispers merging into a cacophony of despair, but Claire held her ground. I will not be part of your nightmare. I choose my son, not the darkness. Suddenly, the light exploded around them, not blinding but illuminating. The darkness recoiled as if burnt. Claire felt an electrifying warmth travel through her fingertips, charging the air, pushing against the shadows with empowering wrath. Ethan. She reached for him, locking her gaze onto his tear-streaked face. We're breaking the curse together. With all her strength, she summoned the light within, radiating it outward like a beacon. The shadows shrieked and crumbled against the brilliance, retreating, cracking like glass against the force of their bond. Don't let go. She yelled, voice echoing powerfully amid the chaos. Together, they lunged toward the pulsing light, tethered by love and resolve that overpowered fear. As they crossed into the light's embrace, the ground beneath lurched, fracturing the altar into splinters, screaming as it disintegrated. In a final flash, both Claire and Ethan were thrust deep into a warmth that enveloped them, lifting them out of the suffocating chaos. Suddenly, they stumbled out into the familiar world. The fog was gone, the darkness lifted. Stars twinkled in the expansive sky, the chill of the night replaced by a serene calm. Mom? Ethan gasped, looking around, his face brightening under the moonlight. We made it. We're safe. Claire knelt before him, her heart swelling with relief and joy. Yes, we are. She enveloped him in her arms, holding him tight as if to never let go again. Every nightmare caught in the past dissolved into a distant memory, its weight no longer pressing against her heart. They were free, liberated from the cursed secrets of the Lotus. Together, they walked back toward their home, hand in hand. Shadows would come and go, but they had faced the darkness, and together, they found the light. Claire looked down at Ethan, tears brimming in her eyes. No more secrets, she whispered, brushing a thumb across his cheek. Only truth. As they stepped into their home, a strange peace settled around them, a soft new beginning. Free at last, but as she closed the door behind them, a breeze whispered through the cracks, carrying laughter that curled around her soul. She climbed the stairs, knowing the Lotus would always exist, but it would no longer be their prison. Time moved forward. The past remained locked away. But somewhere in the shadows, the murmurs persisted, waiting. And something in her gut twisted, a shiver of apprehension followed by an overwhelming strength. If it ever came calling again, they would be ready. Subscribe immediately to the channel to stay with us through this journey. You need to know what comes next. Smash that like button now to keep the momentum rolling with our stories. Your support feeds the algorithm and spreads the tale. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the twists in this ending. I want to hear your thoughts, and to keep the secrets alive, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness these revelations. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. It's your moment.